What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another Mets Hot Stove right here on the channels and on X. And of course, with the offseason comes very, very fun but bad news for the New York Mets. We'll get into all the latest on the Hot Stove. Chris, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing really well. There's been a lot to talk about and not a lot to talk about at the same time with our New York Mets over the past couple of days, especially with the reports that are coming out over on social media. If you've been paying attention to the channels, I mean, I'm sure you've heard some of these reports regarding the pitching, the clubhouse issues that I'm sure that we're going to get into here in this stream as well. But happy to be here. I mean, we're inching closer to the MLB winter meetings, which is basically the juiciest and most important part of this offseason. And I think once the winter meetings start, and honestly, we've seen a fair share of moves, whether it's via trade or free agency already before the winter meetings, which is kind of surprising. Some big moves. I think once the winter meetings start, we'll get into a little bit more of concrete news and we'll start to see stuff materialize around the league, which will shape up what the Mets are going to do. So happy to be here. And yeah, we're going to get this stream in before Sunday Night Football, and appreciate everyone in the chat. Hit the thumbs up, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, it is a little shocking that like during the GM meetings, we knew that the Nemo trade developed in the GM meetings. I'm assuming the Sonny Gray one did too, and a couple other things that went on as well. But the latest signing, which is a former Met, Ryan Helsley has signed with the Orioles with a 2-year, $28 million deal, which I think he cost himself a hell of a lot of money, pitching like crap to an 8 ERA with the New York Mets once he got traded. But he is off the table if anybody was looking to retain him. That what probably wasn't going to happen. I think he wanted the closer role, and he probably fits better in somewhere in the middle of Baltimore, doing what he needs to do. But yeah, so once again, we get more reports in the facet of the in the realm of the Rat Raccoon 2.0 once again. Now, I had this conversation with coworkers, and I'm sure a couple of my Met fan coworkers are watching right now. We talked about this today, and if you're working with somebody and the guy chokes you during an argument, you're probably not going to be good friends with that person, or even close, or even have decent conversations. But we all don't have to work with somebody who's your double play partner in most of the games and a big part of your team. So I understand not everybody has to be friends, right? I work with people that I don't like and I don't want to be friends with, or I don't want to talk to, but work is work. You got to do what you got to do. Same thing goes for Lindor and McNeil. But another altercation in Philly in August was another situation where Jeff McNeil decided to flip a ball where he was too far from second base and flip a ball to try to turn double play. And obviously it didn't happen. And that led to Lindor being pissed off, which, you know what? He should be. As a leader, you should, even though the game was kind of out of hand at that point, you still got to be a leader. And I'm leaning on Lindor's side. We know McNeil is a hothead, but once again, Mike Puma reported all this stuff going on, and then we heard more information come out with Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor. They're not really buddy. They don't really hang out. They're kind of two totally different people, and it just is what it is. You don't have to be friends with somebody to win a championship. Everybody watched the 1986 or remember the 1986 Mets? They weren't the best of friends, right? Gary Carter was a God-fearing man when you got Doc and Darryl, snorting coke in the locker room. Like it's a very weird dynamic, but you don't have to be best friends to win a championship. And with this McNeil situation that has gone back for years, we all knew this. Like, this shouldn't be a shock to anybody, Chris. And you know what? This is probably the last nail in the coffin for Jeff McNeil. Obviously, you're not trading one of your leaders, one of your stars in your team in Lindor. So McNeil's got to go, even though we all thought he probably would anyway.
So I'm going to say this. There's a couple of pieces because I'm sure some Mets fans are probably tired of talking about this, although I think that we should put this should be the thing that gets put to bed. this Sunday night, right? I made a video about it. I broke things down. I talked about what probably matters with the Mike Puma article, which was paywalled, by the way. And that struck a nerve because it's like, and I even said this. This is the first thing, right, Rob? Is that I said we are going to see something in the offseason. If you were a part of this channel or Rob's channel and you saw the streams that we do, I said you will see something this offseason that will come out about this clubhouse that will maybe give an indication of the way guys are getting along or not getting along, right? And probably not getting along given the vibe. And listen, I sat behind the dugout at Nationals Park pretty much every single time they visited Nationals Park in 2025. And in the later stages, that one series, when the Nationals took 2-3, I could even tell something was amiss with these guys, coming back into the dugout and just the way that the vibes and the energy was. Now, again, that was pure speculation at that point, but you know, there was going to be something that the New York media and the New York Post especially were going to report in the offseason that they didn't want to report in season to cause this stir, especially before the winter meetings when things are dead and clicks need to be garnered, right? That is what this is about, especially with the Juan Soto piece. There's two pieces to this, the Juan Soto piece and the Jeff McNeil piece. The Jeff McNeil piece, I can totally buy into. These guys clashed before. They have a history. We all know McNeil's a hothead. Let's be honest. We all know that he has a little bit of an attitude. We can see it when he goes in and gets himself out. And I'm not saying that this argument is on him, and I'm not pinning it on either Lindor or McNeil. And for those of you who do not know the context, sometime in June, the Mets, I guess, are on their way to their 7th straight loss in Philly. It's late in the game. It's an 8-2 game at this point. It's out of reach for the Mets. And Kyle Schwarber gets up and hits what would be a double play that Jeff McNeil, ranging to the hole on the first base side, flips it instead of turning his body and throwing to Lindor to try to speed things up. He flips it instead, and they don't get the double play. And that's probably what we can assume caused this verbal altercation. It wasn't a physical altercation like 2021, a verbal altercation. So, it is what it is. I think that I see a lot of Mets fans, instead of just saying, hey, listen, and being objective, right? Because a lot of Mets fans have had a lot of things to say about Francisco Lindor over the years, ever since he got, traded to this team. Going into 2026, we know who's going to be here long term. We know who's going to be on an expiring contract, last year of his contract, and a guy that is just aging and has not been producing with his bat. I don't care about this altercation. I really could care less about this altercation. I don't. Maybe that's Lindor holding his teammate accountable. Maybe he was too harsh. Nobody knows. That shouldn't be a focal point at this point of the offseason. What matters is who is going to win you more ball games than the other guy, and that is Francisco Lindor over Jeff McNeil. And if anybody tells you differently, they are lying to you as a Mets fan. Francisco Lindor wins more ball games for the Mets than Jeff McNeil, historically and upcoming with where they're at in their careers. And so you have a trade that just happened with the Texas Rangers and Marcus Semien. Do you think that trade is a coincidence, Rob?
No,
I don't think it's a coincidence.
not at all.
This article coming back, it's not a coincidence.
No.
Marcus Semien has a couple more years on his deal, right? And he's 35. He's a little bit older than McNeil. 3 years left on his deal, opposed to McNeil's 1. So you commit that kind of money, and he's making $10 million more than McNeil is per year, and you get better defense, you get better leadership, and you hopefully get a better camaraderie up the middle, turning double plays with these two guys. Jeff McNeil is not going to be on this team. If Jeff McNeil is a part of the New York Mets come 2026, I will sit here. I don't know what I'll do, but I'll tell you that I was dead wrong. I do think Jeff McNeil is going to be traded. I don't think that it's stemming from either just this altercation that they had. I don't think that Lindor is the reason why McNeil is going to get traded. I think Jeff McNeil is on the decline. Yeah, he posted a pretty good season in 2025. Undoubtedly, I'll give him his credit. He did better than I thought he was going to do. But strictly from a roster construction standpoint, this is the time to let go of McNeil. If you have to get rid of and pay off some of his $15.75 million salary, you do it, but you save inevitably some money on the payroll and you free up that roster spot. I don't think they're going to pay $15+ million for a bench bat. And if McNeil is your everyday starting left fielder going into 2026, you have a problem if you are David Stearns. So I also would hope that that's not the plan. And so that's just the Jeff McNeil versus Francisco Lindor portion. And then just to close things out, I'm going to make this very brief. The Lindor versus Juan Soto talking point. It was a think piece. It's not even factual. It's a think piece. And we've heard this before from these outlets, but Mike Puma especially alluding to Soto being this everyday come into the locker room, go on the field, do your business, lead by example, and go home type of player versus Francisco Lindor being a little bit more flashy, into fashion, like that matters at all, is absolute garbage. Garbage. That is the portion that I do not care about, and I think that it's garbage. I do not see into this Lindor versus Soto leadership style. I don't care that Soto wants Starling Marte back. I think that is a non-issue between Lindor and Juan Soto. That is, people could talk about, where they're from, etc. It does not matter. It does not matter. Now, objectively, and this is all subjective because what Mike Puma said in that article about Lindor versus Soto is not objective. That's subjective. That's an opinion piece. That's not a factual statement. Lindor also has had very high praise for Juan Soto. Who wouldn't? He makes your team that much better, 10 times better. But the Lindor versus McNeil portion is definitely more so the factual portion of this piece. And like I said, I'm not going to give blame to McNeil or Lindor, but given the production value of both of these players and given the contractual, commitments that the Mets have to either of those players, it's very clear that McNeil will be the one moved. And it shouldn't even be a question because I see a lot of Mets fans and they have their biases. And, I guess some Mets fans, I don't know how, somehow still don't like Lindor. It is what it is. You will not convince those fans otherwise. He's going to be part of this team for the foreseeable future, and that's just the fact of the matter. So, as far as I'm concerned, that's the last thing that I'll say about this topic, because I think that this Lindor versus Juan Soto issue with the media is only going to grow until the Mets start to win. And as soon as the Mets start winning, the media will have nothing to say about it, because this is the one way to get clicks surrounding the New York Mets right now, is them missing the playoffs and it being a Lindor versus Juan Soto thing. And it's just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, the Lindor Soto thing is so stupid. It's just a waste of time. Two totally different people, right? Don't we all, aren't we all on social media watching every time they come to Citi Field? They show them getting out of their cars, walking into the stadium with all their gear, all their different clothes. That's the whole point of that, to show their fashion. So who cares? Nobody cares. We know Soto is a guy who gets to Citi Field, does his job, and goes home and goes to his family, right? Lindor, he's more of a fashionista. He's more of a guy, go to a fashion show. I mean, who cares? Like, we're obsessed with people's personal lives. That really doesn't matter. Does he show up on time? Does he play? Does he produce? That's what we should care about. And this whole Jeff McNeil, Lindor thing, it's so stupid. You know why more people are still on the side or not on the side of Lindor? Because he's not homegrown. That's the reason why, right? Met fans are infatuated, are in love with this core. That's why they bitched and moaned about Nimmo. That's why they're bitching and moaning right now about Pete Alonso. And now they're mostly going to take McNeil's side, because if they see that they're homegrown, they can do no wrong. I said this about Pete Alonso. I said this about Brandon Nimmo. When you say something bad about them, here come the vultures coming after you. Right? Wasn't I a part of that? The vultures coming after me for Pete Alonso 2 years in a row? Yeah. It's the same problem. Met fans got to get over the fact that this team continues to lose with the same core. That's the problem. Nimmo, McNeil have been here longer than anybody, along with Pete Alonso. They have not won. You can't bring back the same core and act like everything's going to be okay. Oh, add this guy, add that guy, add this guy. Sometimes the core is rotten. You got to fix it. And like Chris said, this Nimmo trade was a direct correlation of getting McNeil out of second base, even if he's still on his team somehow, some way. He's not the second base partner or tandem with Lindor. Well, the shorts, the up the middle tandem between Lindor and Simeon. It's not McNeil. That was the whole idea behind the trade. That's why when we talked about this wasn't a direct fault of Nimmo, but the Mets wanted to get rid of that contract. We all said it. I don't care if you're the biggest Nimmo fan. That's a bad contract. You paid him to be a center fielder, a good to really good defender in center field, and a very good offensive player. He became a bad left fielder and a good offensive player, but has tremendously long cold streaks. This is the whole point. You got rid of the bad Nimmo contract, you saved a couple of years, and you get rid of the nonsense that's been going on up the middle with McNeil and Lindor. You get a real second baseman, a veteran with Lindor. It should be better. That's all it should be about. We got to stop this homegrown nonsense and falling on the side of the homegrown just because they've been here, done that.
It's just wild to me how many big moments Lindor has had for the New York Mets offensively, like key turning points in games that I can recount, right, and count back on, right? You take a look at that. I forgot the pitcher's name for the Blue Jays that was carrying a no-hitter into the top of the ninth, and he comes up and leads off with the home run to tie the game, where the Mets offense was non-existent before that, and the Mets won that game, by the way, right? That was in 2024, if I'm not mistaken. Same thing in 2024, right? All three of these examples are 2024. That home run against Atlanta when the Mets gave up the lead, a big lead, they gave it up, and he went and just brought him back into the game. Grand Slam versus Philly in the NLDS. Like how many more big moments that you want? And I'm sure I'm missing a lot, right, from Lindor, defensively and offensively. What more do you want from this guy? Honestly. So the hate that this guy generates from this fan base is just absolutely mind-boggling at this point. Bowden Francis, thank you, Pat Sinclair. That's absolutely. Bowden Francis is still very talented, and that game pissed me off, but Lindor brought them back from the dead, essentially. And I was going to say one more thing here. Oh, the one thing that I wanted to connect with this, I think that this is kind of a reach too, but it's interesting because I saw this theory being floated around. Of course, everyone's going to float it around. It's going to make, it's going to cause a huge stir. A lot of people are speculating that this information that Mike Puma is putting out there came from Brandon Nimmo. Do you buy that or not?
I do agree. I think so. Honestly, you know why? Here's why. Because these so-called reporters who have no balls, and I will say this, and if they don't like me, that's on them. I'll call them out on X if I have to. I'm not afraid to say it, right? Everybody can share this, post it, send it to them, right? You're a shill. Mike Puma, you're a shill. This is what you did. You called up Brandon Nimmo, try to get information out of him, because let's be honest, guys, Brandon Nimmo's pissed off he got traded. He didn't like what was going on. He didn't like Lindor took the leadership from quote-unquote him, which every time Nimmo or Alonso decided to try to be a leader, they never took advantage of the opportunities that they had. So Lindor had to do it. Unfortunately, because Alonso and Nimmo aren't the guys. They aren't the leaders. They could have been. They were here before Nimmo. They were here before Lindor. They could have took that mantle. They never did. So that's on them. But yeah, I 100%. Mike Puma called Nimmo just to get some information. Hey, can you tell me any details of what's the speculation of this and that? And Nimmo gave him all the goods. Because there's one rule in baseball: you don't say what goes on in that clubhouse or in that dugout that's not on TV. Nimmo broke a cardinal rule in baseball. You don't do that. So Nimmo, the coward that he is, right? The Mr. Nice Guy shit is so nonsense. All right. When this guy is too nice, He's clearly got something under his skin. He got something going on. Brandon Nimmo is a coward. That's what he is. Because I truly believe that he spoke to Mike Puma. 100%. 100%. Because how did this all come out? Look, the reporters see stuff, understandable, but it's speculation. They were adamant about a lot of this when they said it. And in detail. This wasn't like something like, oh, well, we saw Soto go this way into the family room, and Lindor went this way into an area where they had played video games and shit. No, it was detail. That I 100% believe it's Nimmo. And you know what? That's a coward way out. You don't break that cardinal rule, saying what's going on in the clubhouse, right? If reporters find that out on their own, good. But all of a sudden, Mike Puma on, what was it, November 28th, 29th, puts up this article. You know what? If you had balls, do it during the season if you saw something. But you won't do that because you know what? You got a whole season to walk into that clubhouse and ask them questions. You know you won't be a very good reporter if they're not going to answer any of your questions. So you're basically going to be a useless reporter. That's why you didn't do it during the season. So that's on you. So, yeah, I guarantee you Nimmo told them all the goods. And that's fucked up on Nimmo's part. But you know what? That's why Nimmo got traded too. Because here's the thing. With this whole leadership thing with Lindor and guys like that, McNeil, we always knew McNeil, Alonso, and Nimmo were closer on the team, right? Their little clique. They probably never liked Lindor. That's fine. But you know what? Lindor's a better player than all of them. All around better player. And when it comes down to why Lindor had to take that leadership role was because Nimmo and Alonso didn't step up as those leaders. When things were falling apart in 2024, where was Alonso? He was sulking in the corner because he wasn't having a good year. Where was Brandon Nimmo? Smiling at the camera saying, oh, everything will be okay. We know we're a good team. That was the common theme with Nimmo. Kept on saying the same thing. We're a good team. We're a good team. Nimmo, Alonso with his stupid comments didn't know what the hell he was doing because he was having a bad season. So he didn't bother trying to pick up the rest of the team as a leader. What did Lindor do, who wasn't having a good season either? All right, guys, let's have a meeting. Why didn't Alonso do that? Why didn't Nimmo do that? Don't get mad that Lindor took the leadership role when you had that opportunity to do so. That's it. That's your fault. This was your organization you grew up in. They gave you every opportunity to be a leader. You failed. That's why Lindor had to take that role. Don't get mad at him because he's trying to be the leader. And you could say if he's a good leader, great leader, subpar, a half-ass leader, whatever it is, he had to take that role because others who grew up in this organization did not. So that's on them. Let's not act like it wasn't on them. They had their opportunities. They failed in that leadership role that they clearly didn't want to take because I don't think they have any backbone. Look, Nimmo's going to reporters. I truly believe he went to the Mike Puma. I truly believe that. They have no backbone. They talk a big game, but they don't show up when it counts when it comes to the leadership role. So I don't feel bad for them at all. There's another reason why McNeil's going to get traded, not just the whole Lindor situation. I just think they're sick and tired of his antics. And the whole Pete Alonso thing, this is the reason why teams around the league aren't clamoring to give long-term deals to Pete Alonso. That's why it didn't happen last year, and there might be one or two teams that might be going after Pete Alonso for a long-term deal. Not 5, 6, 7 teams. He's a premier power hitter, yet when you see premier power hitters come on the market, so many teams are after him. Why do you don't hear a lot of teams going after Pete Alonso? You hear the Mets, you hear the Red Sox, possibly the Reds. Nothing more. Not much more than that. Why is that?
Because the Red Sox are a really big one that are reportedly in after him.
Understandable. But they're a big market team. Understandable. But this is the thing, Chris. This is what annoys me. Like, read the room. People this is the problem with Met fans. They're so narrowly focused on their own team and just watching them and paying attention to everything them that they're not understanding around baseball. We got the reports that, everybody think Pete Alonso is like a doofus and just in his own world. It's just a weird situation where other players and other teams are other sources on other teams are talking about it. people don't think Pete Alonso is nothing more than just a power hitter. They don't see him as that leader. And oh, there goes my camera. But that's I think you can hear me, right?
I can hear you.
All right, I'm sorry about that. My camera just went off. But Chris, go ahead. I'm gonna try to figure this camera thing out. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll pick up where you left off, and then we can move on to the next thing here, because I honestly think we spent too much on this topic too. I think
I
that this is
agree.
something that's just derailing the off season, and like I said, I think this is just kind of clickbait, so to speak.
I
Um, I think you've summed it up perfectly, Rob. Earlier, is that teammates have disagreements. You don't have to be buddy buddy. In the case of Lindor and Soto, you don't have to like each other if you're Lindor and McNeil. You go out there, you're part of the same team. You're getting paid by the same employer. You're out there for one common goal, and that's it. And that's what it should be at the end of the day. And so I think that this is being definitely blown out of proportion, so to speak, especially from the Lindor Soto standpoint. But it is kind of suspicious that Mike Puma did release an article about Brandon Nimmo and I guess the trade, just summarizing the trade and the synopsis of the trade on the same day later on that evening that he dropped the article that the Mets had some clubhouse issues with McNeil and Lindor. But I will say also that I wouldn't pinpoint that on Nimmo. Like I genuinely it's a shot in the dark to say that that is Brandon Nimmo, in my humble opinion. Like I don't know if he did. I know a lot of Mets fans are saying that he did. They think that he did. I know that you said that you think you did. Oh, he did. I don't. I I can see if it were to be a possibility, right? Down the line, if someone said, "Oh, Lindor or Nimmo definitely said that about the team to Puma," I could definitely see that. But I think that it's just very early to speculate that type of thing. And there's also a handful of other people in this organization or that are not a part of this organization anymore that could have also leaked that to the media as well. There's a lot of possibilities outside of Brandon Nimmo. Um, but anyways, that's really all I had, Rob, about the topic. So, Mets
yeah.
favorite Salan Valdez. Listen, we need to start. We need to. I dropped a video on my channel
Mhm.
today talking about two names. One of them being Framber Valdez. If you missed it, if you're watching on my channel, I know that we have a lot of people watching. A lot over on Rob's channel. A lot over on my channel. First of all, I'm gonna just do the plugging here. If you haven't subscribed to both channels, make sure you do so. You will see all our faces, both of our faces here, and this beautiful background here all off season long. So if you enjoy listening to us talking about this team, make sure to subscribe to both channels. But in my channel, I did linked in description. I talked about Valdez. I talked about Freddie Peralta. Right? There's a lot of pitchers that could fit the mold of the Mets rotation moving forward in 2026. Now, I know you released a video on your channel about Framber Valdez, and you actually alluded to, I think it was John Heyman. I talked about what I thought was the bogus report from Hector Gomez over on his X account, right?
Cheers.
And Hector Gomez had to say something about 6 years,
Yeah.
$200 million for Framber Valdez. I'm just going to say this exactly what I said in my video, right? If you think that David Stearns is giving a 32-year-old, a just recent 32-year-old in Framber Valdez, 6 years, $200 million, you are mistaken. And that's why I put up on my poll right here on this stream that I have is that I can see 3 or 4 years for Valdez, and I can see David Stearns offering that to him. I'm not sure what other offers he's going to field. I'm sure there's going to be a team that is desperate enough to at least give him 5 years, let alone the 6 years. But when you take a look at, I think that this has to be the revolving conversation, Rob, that Dylan Cease and what he just got from the Toronto Blue Jays in terms of free agent pitching that is not plentiful. You're talking about a handful of names, right? Tatsuya Mai, Cease is off the board, Framber Valdez, Ranger Suarez, maybe a few others. You know, that Cease deal sets a very bad precedent because that was an egregious overpay from the Toronto Blue Jays. And I know that there's 2 years separating Valdez and Cease, right? Valdez is 32, Cease is about to be 30. Both have had their inconsistencies, although the degree of inconsistencies has been less from Valdez. He's been a little bit more consistent, especially right in his Houston Astros days. I just don't see a world where David Stearns goes 5 or 6 years. I think he caps this out at 3 to 4 years because free agency at the end of the day is the best way on your own terms through negotiation to get a guy in the door rather than giving up the prospect capital via trade. And this would be the start to getting those two big name pitchers in the doors for David Stern. So, I mean, I don't know what you heard. I didn't see the report from John Heyman regarding Framber Valdez, but Hector Gomez, first of all, that guy has been hit or miss. I don't really pay attention to him. He's been more wrong in my estimation than he's been right. And I just don't think that the desperation will never, ever get the stronghold over David Stearns when it comes to pitching in general, whether it's relief pitching, which is why I have doubts that Edwin Diaz is coming back because I don't know if David Stearns is going to give him that contract that he wants, but especially starting pitching. I mean, the deal that I was most shocked at with David Stearns is that he gave Sean Manaea the contract that he did last offseason for a 30-plus-year-old. But if this guy's asking for 5 or 6 years, I would cross him off your list. I could be wrong. That's just what I'm getting. That's the vibe that I'm getting.
Yeah, so John Heyman did an article in the big long article that he wrote. It was like 3 sentences that he believes that the Mets are the favorites to land Framber Valdez. Wherever he gets that information from, it was like 2 sentences in amongst the Nimmo stuff and the possibility of McNeil being traded for in a package and all that stuff, where the Mets could be looking at maybe a relief pitcher, to package McNeil or something like, or put McNeil in the trade for like a relief pitcher and stuff like that. The Hector Gomez thing, and this is why I did that video with Framber Valdez, not because I was like, oh, they signed him. No, the fact that Hector Gomez put out that ridiculous 6-year deal. I said it in the video. I don't believe that's factual. If it is, I don't really care. If the Mets want to give him 6 years, give him 6 years. I really don't care anymore, right? You failed on giving 3-year deals. This is the problem with baseball fans in general when it comes to long-term deals with pitchers and short-term deals with pitchers, right? They still get hurt. That still affect your team. And I said the same thing, with Burns last year, right? Nobody can predict a workhorse type of pitcher getting Tommy John. He wasn't, used to being injured all the time or always injured. Like, you can't predict that. Like, Sean Manaea was somewhat healthy. So the Mets gave him a short-term but a very lucrative deal. He got hurt. Like, did that affect us a lot during the season? Did it matter if it was a short-term deal or a long-term deal? No, it didn't. That's why when people are like, I'm not giving 6 years to a Framber Valdez or whoever, who cares? Like, get him in here. Here's what I know. You sign him tomorrow, he's the best pitcher on your team. That's just a fact.
That's a fact, but do you think that David Stearns views it like that? That's a different conversation.
He completely failed last year in everything he did pitching. So I don't know if he's changing his philosophy. He might just say, you know what? I still believe in my philosophy, but I can't be playing these same games with 14 reclamation projects in this rotation and bullpen and expect everything to work out. Because what happened in 2024 was a lot of luck. Let's make no mistake about it. Signing Severino, signing Manaea, those were, again, that was a transition year. They weren't expected to make the playoffs. They did that just to see if they can trade them at the deadline. We all know that. It didn't work out that way because they pitched well. But that took a lot of luck. Everything had to go right with health and pitching well for things to go right with those two guys. And it made him look like a genius. And I honestly think he got a big head. That's why he's saying Frankie Montas to that ridiculous 2-year deal. That's why he brought in, more guys that were reclamation projects. It just started to be a problem. And where I think the Valdez thing is going to go, I think they're willing to give him 4 years. I do think there could be a 5th year, like maybe a vesting option or some type of option. Maybe it's a club option. Maybe if he has to pitch a certain amount of innings, in that 4th year to kick in that 5th year. I think they'll do something like that. But I do know for a fact he would go 3 years with a very high AAV because these 6-year deals that he's probably looking for is probably going to be in the 25 to $27 million range. I think the Mets are willing to pay 32, 33, $34 million a year if it's a short-term deal. So if they can get him on a short-term deal, great. I don't care if you give him $100 million a year. I don't give a shit. If it's a short-term deal, look, I'm all on board with short-term deals. But if you want the guy, fucking get him. The Blue Jays wanted Dylan Cease. You know what they did? They made sure they got him by overpaying him. So what? Does anybody give a shit once he's pitching on your team? No, it doesn't matter. That's why this infatuation of these contracts are so stupid. David Stearns, do you want Framber Valdez? If it's a yes, then pay him. If there's another deal out there that is 5 years or whatever, and you risk losing him to, let's say, a National League rival, give him the 6th year. You'll deal with that shit in 5 years. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just don't understand. Like, I'm pretty sure Framber Valdez in a 6-year deal will have really very similar numbers in the first 3 years. Worry about the back end on the back end, just like every other contract you worried about on the back end. That's the thing. I would do it. That's why I think David Stearns is probably still. Look, I think he'll he'll feel it in his core a little bit if he has to give him that deal. He might throw up in the corner because that's not something he's used to. But he also never had the money like this either. So
Yeah.
the fact that we've been hearing from day one of the offseason, the Mets are looking to go after 2 top lines or 2 top starters. Right? That has been reported by multiple reporters, legit reporters, about that. So you just assume that they didn't change just out of the whim. I think they're going to sign one. Now, is it Framber Valdez? I don't know. But I think they're going to sign a very good to top level pitcher and trade for a pitcher as well. As we'll get to talk about that in a little bit, Chris.
Right. I think that's the most logical route too, because I think that they're going to be heavy like players for Tatsuya Mai, who I guess a lot of reporters are predicting him to go to the Giants at this point and them being the favorites. But I think the Mets are really interested in Mai. That's the vibe that we've gotten. And I think that it'll be with Amai too. Like, we haven't talked about this, I don't think, but he came out and said that he's not going to the Dodgers. He wants to beat the Dodgers, which is a guy that I'm like, all right, sign me up. I don't care about any of the speculation about the numbers and how it can translate to MLB. Tatsuya Amai, hopefully you are a New York Met, because I like that mentality. That's the New York mentality that you need to have. And so I hope that they can swing that deal. That'd be one less headache in terms of trying to get that second piece in the rotation in the door. But I think that this also relies on heavily. I've already said this. I will say this up front. If there are negotiations with Valdez, if David Stearns has a 4-year offer and another team comes in with a 5-year offer, with him being already 32 years old, I do not see David Stearns going up to that 5th year. If you see a notification from Jeff Passan saying, breaking, the New York Mets signed Framber Valdez to a 5-year, whatever $1 million deal, I will be shocked and I will be wrong. I do not see it, because David Stearns is a little hard-headed in his ways, Rob, especially
I
in
agree.
terms
I
of
agree. But let me
pitching.
say, if you see tomorrow the Mets give Valdez 5 years for whatever amount of money, would you be happy?
Of course, I said that I want this guy on my team. Yes, like
Exactly.
me not thinking that the Mets are going after him is completely separate to me wanting him, because I know that he had a little bit of a down year to his standards in 2025. I understand that, right? I actually believe that he started off the season in 2025 against the New York Mets, and he made this lineup look silly, and it got our
So
season off on the wrong foot.
I
He's
just
a
want
guy that you can insert at the top of your rotation 100%. 100%.
192 innings. That's all. You know how important that is to your bullpen. Like, didn't we watch that in living
Sure.
color with the New York Mets going
Yeah.
4 innings, sometimes 5? I mean, when somebody went 6 innings, it was like, oh my god, like you almost have a heart attack. Like that's the type of guy you need. And everybody's like, oh, but he had a 3.66 ERA. Yeah, but look at the advanced analytics. You could see he pitched a lot better than what his ERA said. That's why when people only look at 1 or 2 numbers, they're like, oh, he had a good season. But if you look at the advanced numbers, and I'm not a big guy in advanced numbers, but when the Mets are getting a guy, if you look at the advanced stats, it's like, you know what, he pitched a lot better. And he's not a guy who strikes out a ton of guys. That's why he throws a lot of innings. He's a contact guy. Another reason why I think he might be a New York Met, because the Mets are solidifying their defense. That's what they're doing. He is a strike thrower. He pitches to contact. You need good defense behind him.
I see a comment here up top from SJD is saying that Tetsuya Mai is going to be, 5 years, 25 million plus for those 5 years. This guy's 27 years old, right? This is the thing about David Stearns, is that he thinks that 30-year mark, where pitchers kind of go past that 30 years and start to decline a little bit, that's the sticking point. And so that's why we're talking about Framber Valdez the way, at least I am, the way that I am, because I'm like, David Stearns, see that he's 32 years old, and what's his incentive, given what he's done before, both with the Brewers and so far with the Mets, to give him a long-term deal? Not much from what we've seen. Can he prove me wrong? Yeah, absolutely, but I haven't seen it yet. Tetsuya Mai is 27 years old. So I think that he would definitely take that chance, and I think that he definitely would spend that money on a 27-year-old instead of the 32-year-old on a 5-year deal. That's where I don't agree with that comment. I can definitely see David Stearns really pushing for Tetsuya Mai. And I'm not saying that Amaya is going to translate right away. We saw some growing pains even with Sasaki and Yamamoto. That's very much a possibility. But we also saw how big who was it? Yamamoto was, right, for the Dodgers down the stretch. And so or was this who was the guy that who was it, Sasaki or Yamamoto, that was the guy that was always in the 9th inning for the Dodgers down the stretch? It was Yamamoto,
Sasaki,
right?
Sasaki.
Oh, Sasaki. It's Sasaki. Okay, so but both of them, I mean, they've proven, right, that they had a little bit of slow starts in this league, and they've adjusted, right? Both Sasaki and Yamamoto for the Dodgers. And so I expect those growing pains to be present for Amai, but I just, with what they can give you from the upside perspective in terms of the stuff, like, that definitely is a good investment for a 27-year-old, right? Over a guy like Framber Valdez, I would say, right? You get the proven ability with a 32-year-old that has proven MLB experience for sure, but I just don't think that David Stearns sees it that way. So what I say and what I want versus what David Stearns might be thinking for the long-term contract, 5+ years, might be totally different. So, and I think that also, Rob, that this is very contingent on the next topic and what the Mets do with Kodai Senga. I think it's very contingent.
And you know what? The first signing of a real starting pitcher is going to be a telltale sign, I think, of what David Stearns is really thinking when it comes to 30-year-olds, when it comes to signing guys for a decent to long-term deal. And yeah, so when it comes to Senga, Senga, it was reported that Senga said, says that he doesn't want to get traded. He does have a limited no trade clause to 10 teams. I'm not sure what they are. I tried to find it. I couldn't find the 10 teams. But, I mean, you can probably pick teams that are it's a wild guess, but let's just say the Mets, obviously they know the teams that he can't get traded to. So there's other teams. There's 20 other teams out there that they can trade him to. So I think we'll be okay. I don't want this guy on my team. I just don't. I'm sick and tired. Like, this guy's a quitter. Why do you want this guy on the team? Like, there was too many Met fans. Oh, did you see what he did in the first? Yeah, I did see what he do. I did see that, Alonso threw the ball over his head. But you know what? The guy can stretch. Like, the guy barely stretched and, pull the freaking calf muscle. Like, come on. Like, it's not even just the injury part because he's been injured. It's just the fact that the Mets continue to abide by the Senga rules. They gotta make everything perfect for him. That's why they go to his 6-man rotation, probably fucking up other pitchers in that rotation. Like, let's make no mistake about it. In 2024, Senga was nowhere to be found in his rotation. Were they okay? Yeah, they were. Right? I truly think when you set up your rotation for one particular guy to get extra days off, I think you hurt the other guys in this rotation. And I've been saying that, Christian. You've been on so many shows with me. I've said that for 2 years now. 2 years. Senga messes up whatever rhythm these other pitchers have, and you still don't know what you're going to get from Kodai Senga. Is he going to be able to pitch? Can he go long into games? Like, you would think, giving him extra rest, this guy can go 7 innings, easily. He can protect your bullpen even if he's not pitching well and go 6 innings. But he doesn't do that. When he doesn't have it, it's a disaster. And it happens way too often. And when the Mets needed him, I say this too many times already, when the Mets needed him the last 3 weeks of the year and he wasn't injured, he was nowhere to be found. When we were throwing God knows who to start games and a broken down Mania, Senga was quote unquote healthy, but his mechanics, according to him, were all messed up. Yet, you should have been there for your team. Even if you would have got rocked, at least you were there for your team. I give you credit for at least that. You didn't even show up. The final 3 weeks of the year, you were nowhere to be found. Why do I want to get? I don't care if you're his 7th starter. I don't want you on this team. He got a very team-friendly contract. Trade him. He's valuable. Use him as an asset and get something back for him. It's an addition by subtraction, in my opinion.
I think, and I agree with you. I think that Kodai Senga, in terms of the perspective of the New York Mets trying to build a rotation, is definitely a lot better off for this team moving on from him. I think the parameters of his deal is like he's got 2 solid years left and a conditional option, right? For that 3rd year. I'm not sure what the conditions are. Not going to even speculate, but it is what it is. I agree with you, man. That end to the 2025 season where we needed Senga to win ball games, especially down the stretch, especially in that last series against the Miami Marlins. And he's out there, doesn't feel comfortable coming back. He's throwing 93. His fastball velocity is down. He doesn't feel right. And he's just out there in Florida rehabbing.
It's
And
too hot.
back to the New York Mets, right? I guess more power to him. He's not going to try to hinder the team while pitching injured, quote unquote. But there wasn't really a report of an injury, right? He was just out there because he got optioned because he wasn't performing well. There was no injury with Kodai Senga. At least that was what was reported back then, which had us shaking our heads and scratching our heads, I should say, about what's going on. But I'll say this. The Mets pitching staff in 2026, barring an unforeseen trade, because I think it's unlikely, and we'll talk about it in 2 topics time with Tariq Skubal, because I can see Tong and Sproat in that deal if the Mets are able to do it. But if those guys are here, you have a rotation of McClain, Tong, Sproat at this point going forward into 2026 with guys like David Peterson and Clay Holmes, also headlining that rotation. Senga, with even a free agent target, like we said with Valdez, if that happens, or whoever else, would probably be the odd man out in terms of the 6-man rotation. I know what your answer is, Rob. You don't want a 6-man rotation. I know
No,
that.
I think
We've
it's
gone
stupid.
back and forth on this all day long, every day last off season. If you missed all the streams, go rewind on our channel if you have the time and patience to do that. We talked about this very thing.
Yep.
I'm inclined to side with you now, although I will say, if the rotation is still going to remain as young as it is, with the names that you have in McClain, Tong, Sproat, and those 3 guys, are you scared to put him on 5 days rest with the innings over the course of a 162 season, given what you just saw in the previous season with Christian Scott? I'm not saying
No.
I agree with that notion. I think I do agree with you, Rob. I'm just saying I'm playing, devil's advocate here. Does that worry you?
No, because I see them throwing innings. They were throwing 6, 7 innings every time they went out in the minor leagues. Just because they weren't facing big league hitters, they were still throwing, 90 to 95 pitchers. They were still throwing 7 innings, right? Obviously, they did limit their innings, but they started to limit their innings because the Mets needed pitching at the big league level. But they were throwing 6, 7 innings. I think if they would have left them in the minors, they would throw a ton of innings. I don't think you have to worry about that. Like, I'm not saying in April, throw McClain 9 innings. Like, yeah, take him out in the 5th inning if you have to save his innings for the later in the season. Absolutely. But, I don't think you have to worry about that. I think the whole point of the 6-man rotation is to help out one of the pitchers that really can't go 5 minutes, every fifth day. We know Senga can't do that. I don't think it's a big deal. I think Nolan McLean is the type of guy that here's the thing. If you start to limit their innings, then you're already leading towards disaster. Because when you need them to make the starts, they're not ready to make those starts. And I said this last year on many shows that we did. If you're going to keep on babying these guys, and then when you need them to go 7 innings because your bullpen's tired, they don't know how to do that. And this is why I think the 6-man rotation is a detriment to rotations. Because of the fact that they baby all these pitchers, they do 6-man rotations, give extra days off, and then when it comes late August into September and you need a start, oh hey, I know you haven't pitched on regular rest in 3 months, but hey, do that now. But hey, we need 7 innings and 95 pitches, and now we're expecting them to do that. This is the problem. This is why it doesn't make sense what they've done to these guys and what the Mets have done. If you notice when they were pitching in the minors, they were going 6 and 7 innings consistently. The only time when they started to limit their innings was when they knew they were going to bring them up so they can have more innings at the major league level. They would have pitched 6, 7 innings for the rest of the year. So I'm not worried about that. I think that you have to set these guys up to build up those innings. So when you need them to do it in August and September, they know what to do.
I have a question for you. And I agree with you. I honestly, I agree with you. And you were right. I'll say this. You were right about the whole 6-man rotation. Although, do I still think that the Mets are going to at least try it to start the season? I wouldn't put it past them to do it. I would not put it past them to do it, Rob.
Well, can you give me a good pitcher or a reputable?
Right.
Because isn't that the other problem?
Correct.
Like, I don't want to see Tyler McGill. Oh, well, he's hurt, but a Tyler McGill type as our 5th to 6th starter. Like, what do you?
Well, he will be back though. By the way,
games.
don't you worry about that. He's going to be back.
We're costing us games though. That's the problem. Like, oh great, we have to score 10 runs today just to win. Like, it's stupid. I think the 6-man rotation is overrated and it's for small market teams that don't want to spend money. That's what it is. And Stearns is trying to do that with a big market team.
I ultimately do. If I have to give my prediction, I think that Stearns also knows this, and I think that he is going to also deal Senga. Like, for me, thinking about this situation, I think it's 50-50. I think it all matters about the value of what David Stearns can get back for Senga. Because we've seen the reports so far, a lot of big name reporters say that there's a lot of trade interest for Kodai Senga around the league, but they view him as a buy low option, which means they probably take on the rest of the contract. Maybe the Mets help out financially just a little bit, but they take on the majority of the contract. The Mets free up that roster spot to do as they please with the rotation via trade, free agency, and internally. But can you swing Kodai Senga in a bigger deal to get more value, even if you have to attach an MLB-ready player like Vientos or Mauricio, or even a prospect in return? Now, I'll tell you what. I made a video about Pablo Lopez, right, from the Minnesota Twins. I think that if the Twins are serious about shedding payroll, the rest of the contract aligns in a manner where those two contracts are similar in terms of the years, but the value, Pablo Lopez is getting paid a little bit more. That's a way to free up some money on their books. Although I'm not saying it's a 1-for-1 deal, you'll attach a lower end prospect and maybe make that work. Or I see the name in the chat. I can see this too, especially given the way that their rotation looked like in the AL East. They just added Sonny Gray. They have Garrett Crochet. They probably need one more pitcher, I would say, to be comfortable. Could you swing a deal where Kodai Senga goes over to the Boston Red Sox and maybe, just maybe, I'm not saying it's 1-for-1, Rob. Again, there's a lot of other pieces that have to be right, elsewhere with what the Mets attach to Senga. But Jarren Duran can solve an outfield issue for you as well if needed. I think that's a little bit more far-fetched. A lot of people talk about Senga in a 1-for-1 deal for like a reliever. I just don't know if David Stearns is going to give Senga up for a lack of value. I don't know if he's going to do that. That is my main concern. So if I'm Stearns, I'm immediately thinking American League. I'm thinking Twins. I'm thinking Red Sox. I haven't started thinking about other teams just yet that could be a fit, but that's where my mind goes to get the most value for Senga rather than relying on getting just some sort of no-name reliever for him and hoping that reliever turns into something special for 2026. So I don't know.
Yeah.
The value is set though, and that's what we have to go off of, is that teams don't value him enough to give up anything of value right now. They view him as low value, and I just think that is a very, I guess, grim sign, even though I'm holding out
Well,
hope that
I
he
mean,
gets traded. I don't know.
the reports are teams are interested in Kodai Senga. It's not the Mets, openly trying to trade him. It's been teams are asking about Kodai Senga. Like that
At
has
a
been
low value though, they're trying to buy low on him. That was what was directly stated.
that's fine. I mean, that's why he's probably not traded yet. But I think Stearns is going to find any way possible to trade him if it's in a package or what. Honestly, if you're going this far, honestly, I'm not saying to give him for a bag of balls or anything like that. But if we saw how Stearns reacted when they asked him about Kodai Senga, it looked like he was fed up with him. I think he is fed up with him, and I'm not saying to get nothing, and you're going to try to find the best value possible for Kodai Senga. I think you got to find. Let's say there's 6 teams after him. Get the best deal. Don't waste time, right? Senga needs to be traded right when the winter meetings is happening, right before the winter meetings or right when the winter meeting is about to start. You can't go into the winter meetings having Senga lingering in this rotation and trying to sign this guy or that guy or try to trade this guy and this guy for a couple of rotation pieces. You just can't do that, right? Because if you sign Valdez and let's say you trade for Freddie Peralta, everybody and their mother know that you're going to have to get rid of Senga. So you're going to get even less for him. Like you're setting yourself up for disaster. So get rid of Senga now, so you're holding all the cards when it comes to signing potential free agent starters or trading for potential starters.
It's really what David Stearns' mindset is and his accepting level is of what he gets in return for Senga. Does David Stearns value that roster spot that Senga is taking up right now to backfill elsewhere? Or does he want something of value in return to immediately replace Kodai Senga? That's what it comes down to.
I don't
I
think
think.
I don't think it's replacing Kodai Senga. I honestly think that if you can get, again, you see how Stearns worked with the bullpen, right? If he can get, a AAA arm that had a 1.5 ERA that a team's willing to give up, he would do it. Honestly, you shed the $14+ million the next 2 seasons for Senga, so you add into your payroll. Remember, you got to remember that part too, right? If you can
Yeah, for sure.
a guy that is, let's say, a AAA arm that had a really good season that could be, a depth piece either in your bullpen or a starting rotation situation, he would do that because look, it saves $28 million. Guess what? That's more money for Pete Alonso. That's more money for Edwin Diaz. That's more money for whatever free agent pitcher you're bringing in. So, with the Nimmo contract saving that money, with the $28 million you're saving on Senga, I mean, that's 50, 60, $70 million right there. You can add on to your payroll.
But that's also under the assumption that he is going to give up the prospects, or he's going to give up the years that it takes to get Valdez or Satsuya to replace Kodai Senga, because Senga's spot, no matter what, has to be replaced, whether it's in a direct trade or whether it's via free agency or another trade, right? So you have to talk about that. But like, yeah, I don't know, man. I see where you're coming from too, is that I don't know if he'll take a non-major league ready reliever though that has already shown that he could pitch in the major
league. It depends
league.
on what he wants to do, right? Does he want to just shed the payroll, the $28 million, or get the best value for Senga? Because
Are you concerned about that though?
No, I'm not. But I think David
the
Stearns
payroll
is.
aspect though.
I think David Stearns is, not me. I think David Stearns is, because that's the whole idea, right? We traded Brandon Nimmo to get out of that contract. That saves us 3 years on the deal. So I think that was all somewhat, obviously
2
other
years,
issues,
I
but
guess. 2
2
years.
years, yeah, that's right. But I
2
think
years.
that it was more about, or somewhat more about, the contract, the money you were saving over the next couple of years with Nimmo. And I think the same thing with Senga. If you can save the $28 million, put it this way, I don't care about the money, but clearly David Stearns is a manipulator of money when it comes to the payroll. Like if he
Is
can
that
save,
coming from Steve Cohen?
I don't think so. I think here's what comes from Steve Cohen. Hey, I want Pete Alonso. Let me do this. Like that's what I think. I think he lets David Stearns cook until he realizes, oh my God, the fans are getting on me, and then Steve Cohen jumps in and signs Pete Alonso. That's what I think it is. I think this is David Stearns worrying about payroll, and then Steve Cohen smacks him on the back of the head, be like, "Do you see my bank account? Stop it. Be a good boy and do your job." Like I truly believe that. Like so, I think when it comes to David Stearns, I think the Nimmo was partially because of payroll saving money, and I think to use it for either a Diaz Alonso combination, using that towards them, or just in general payroll. And the same for again, if you trade Senga, let's say you trade, and even if it does bring back, let's say a minor league pitcher, let's just say you're saving $28 million and another, what, $45 to $50 million on Nimmo. I mean, that's $80 million right there you're saving in a couple of seasons. Like, that's a big deal, especially if you're going to sign Valdez for a 6-year deal, if that's the case. So I truly believe that Senga is more of the payroll. Let's get out of the money, even though it's not a big deal. But again, if somebody's going to take on that money, I would think you would try to get something somewhat of value. And what that is, again, we don't know what David Stearns is thinking, right? I love for him to come on a show and, tell us absolutely nothing like he usually does in interviews. So it's like, I don't know at this point, but I think it is with David Stearns when it comes to that. He's looking at more of the money situation than probably the value of what you can get back for Senga.
First of all, I just got to be very transparent. The Knicks are playing right now too, so if you see me
They're playing
looking
the Raptors,
here,
right?
it's yeah,
Yeah.
back-to-back turnovers is not pleasing me, but they've shot the ball really well so far. So I'm looking at the next game here. But what I will say is I want to get this out of the way. We're gonna do a lot more streams and all that stuff this off season. I know that you were kind of skeptical about David Stearns last offseason. What's your belief level in David Stearns before we move on to Brandon Nimmo on that topic? What's your belief level in him addressing all the needs in this offseason? I'm curious.
I don't trust him.
You don't trust him. Okay.
Like I said, if
That's fine. That's fine.
he's got to make a big, like he hasn't made a big trade. I know this Nimmo thing, but this wasn't more of a, Simeon's not better than Nimmo, but that trade wasn't a 1-for-1 player of who's better than who. It was more of what was going on in the Mets team itself. So I need to see him make a big trade to get a really good addition, or make a big signing that says, okay, you're for real. Because 2024 was a lot of luck. My trust level is not very high with David Stearns. I don't trust him. I think he's trying to bargain basement everybody, and I think his problem is he waits for the market to dictate itself, and then when he tries to pounce, it's too late, and not willing to go the extra mile. I think the way a lot of fans should think is that if you want a player, go get him. Why was Juan Soto so important last year? Was because the Mets wanted him. Steve Cohen wanted him. It didn't matter what it cost. Get him. This is the same situation on any big-time free agent or trade. Go get him. And I don't think David Stearns is the go-get-him type. I think, well, I like him, but this is my limit. Like, we have money coming off the payroll. We just traded the contract that gives us a couple more year flexibility. We have the room. I think if you want a player and you like him that much, go get him. I'm not saying to go with the highest offer right off the bat. Like, I'm not telling to go to Valdez and call him and say, hey, 6 years, 200. All right, let's go. No, obviously you want to negotiate a little bit. but don't come with a 3-year deal and think he's gonna, talk to his family about that, or talk to Boris or wherever his agent is, and have a long conversation. Like, come with a competitive offer and then negotiate. Maybe the 6-year deal can get down to a 5-year deal. Like, that's what you have to look at. And I don't think he's that type of GM/president of baseball ops. That's why I don't trust him.
I think that he is going to be. I think if I had to guess, I've been wrong about David Stearns before, and he really needs to show me something as well. I've been a David Stearns supporter, for those of you all who know. And you've listened to my back and forth with Rob going back to last offseason. I believe in David Stearns, and I have, but he really needs to show me something this offseason. And this offseason is a lot trickier than last offseason when he could have went and splurged with the prospects. I think he's going to be more aggressive in dealing the MLB ready talent and prospects than he is trying to go out there and give a long-term deal in free agency. That's why I think a trade for a big name is a lot more likely than splurging on a contract of Framber Valdez. Now, he has been aggressive, to M. Easy's point in the chat, of these guys coming over from, these international leagues. There has been times where they've offered big time money to these players coming over, and it just hasn't worked out with what the players wanted for their vision and their next team. I think he will offer the money and years necessary for Tatsuya Amai. So I would be inclined to believe, and I will say on this stream, that I think Tatsuya Amai will be a New York Met, because I think that David Stearns understands the gravity of this rotation, and he prioritizes Amai over a guy like Valdez from the age difference and maybe even the stuff when you take a look at the breakdown of the scouting report. So I'm going to go on record and say that I think Tatsuya Amai will be a New York Met. Now, there will be a lot of competition. Clearly, the Giants, the Yankees, and whoever else are going to be on the services of Amai. And that's what I'll go. It's going on a limb, but you got to do it right here before the winter meetings, right? That's part of the fun this offseason. But I just don't think that he's as likely to budge on free agents. Like, that's why, like, he would never give Dylan Cease that deal that the Toronto Blue Jays gave him. He would never do that, because would you do that, Rob? Like, would you do that for a 7-year deal, $210 million for Dylan Cease with what he's put up for the past 3 years? Because I'm sure as hell I
No,
would be mad if I was a Blue
but you
Jays
know what?
fan, because that's
But you know
reckless
what?
spending. That's reckless
You know what? Then
spending.
the Blue Jays fans are idiots. You know why? Because here's the thing, right? Nobody wanted to go to Toronto for the last couple of seasons, right? How many times have they willing to give money in years? Soto, Otani, right? And they didn't want to go there. They have to overpay. I'm not looking at the Toronto Blue Jays as what it could be for this offseason. I think the Dylan Cease to Toronto Blue Jays is a completely different story. I think Toronto Blue Jays offered him a really damn good deal because they are desperate, because players don't want to go there even when they were offering the most years and money. Because how close was Toronto with Soto and Otani? They were offering the world, and it wasn't enough. So I think they were in a desperate situation. So I'm not looking at that. Here's the thing. I said this before. I'll say it again. I don't care. If you want a guy, go get him. One more year, didn't get George Springer. We got Brandon Nimmo. How's that working out? Right? What team got to the World Series, and what team didn't get to the World Series and now doesn't have that guy on his team anymore? Right? Go back a couple of years ago when Nimmo was a free agent with George Springer. How many times I said I wanted George Springer over Brandon Nimmo? I said that many times, right? And look how that's working. Toronto still has George Springer, got the help get them to the World Series, clutch as hell, and Brandon Nimmo's not on this team anymore. So I think I won that conversation. But whatever. The fact of the matter is, go get your guy. I don't care if it's a pitcher, position player, it doesn't matter. I'm sick and tired of the Mets losing out on guys because they're not willing to go the extra year. If the Mets lose out on Valdez because of an extra year, they're idiots. Because you know what? Are they going to give Ranger Suarez or or another pitcher that's somewhat of a top level, 1 year less, and that's gonna be okay? Here's what I know. Valdez has been a damn good pitcher most of his Houston career. He throws innings. He's a strike thrower, and he's a stopper. That's what he's a postseason performer. Like, that's what I want. Like, give it, if you have to give him the 6th year to not lose him to, say, another National League team, do it. I'm sick of, like, you can't keep on losing out on guys because of a 6th year. If Met fans are complaining about a 5th year or a 6th year, then question yourself in the mirror and think, do you really want to win? Because when the Mets can't pitch in August, you're going to look back to the other players we didn't get that are pitching well and then wonder why the Mets are not doing what they're supposed to do.
My point is that, let's say this, for example, David Stearns, this is the primary statement that I want to get across in terms of how I hope. I don't know if he's going to do it. I hope that he is going to do it. How he is going to learn from his previous mistake last offseason. This is a direct example from me. I hope that he learns that he should be spending the prospect capital to go and acquire a name like, I don't know, either Peralta or Skubal or whatever major pitcher presents themselves on the starting pitching market, and spend the prospect capital to get that pitcher, because he didn't do it for Garrett Crochet when he had the opportunity last season. And I hope that he takes that route and he learns that route before he learns the route of giving into what Valdez wants if it is a 5 or 6 year deal, versus when he didn't do it last offseason, giving into a guy like Corbin Burns for a 7-year deal. Now, Max Fried, you all know me. My heart was broken with Max Fried because I really wanted Max Fried.
Let me ask you something. Here's the problem with David Stearns. He's not willing to give up prospects, and he's not willing to spend the money. So how are you going to get anybody? He hasn't done it in 2 years.
That's what I'm saying, is that I hope that if there's one lesson, if he has to budge, I've said this whole offseason so far, in this early offseason, that he has to budge in his philosophy. He has to.
At least one of them.
At least one of them. Because he has multiple different philosophies. You're right. He can either budge in the philosophy of looking at pitchers that are 30 plus years old and giving them a long-term contract, or he can budge in the philosophy of trading for a younger 26, 27, 28-year-old pitcher and giving up the prospect capital. What I just said in my comparison, right, is that I hope that he budges and changes his philosophy on the trade portion and giving the prospects or guys that may not fit on this team moving forward, like Ronnie Mauricio, maybe Brett Beatty, and Mark Vientos for sure, and other prospects that you don't know who are going to pan out, like you always say. And I hope that he pulls that deal off if it presents itself, just like Garrett Crochet did last offseason. So I agree. There's two different philosophies here.
But Chris, here's the thing, though. If he's going to trade, let's say he does take some prospects, I don't think Freddie Peralta is earth-shattering. I think you can get him on a limited number of prospects, right? That's not going to excite me saying that, we traded prospects for Freddie Peralta. I don't think that's a big deal. I think that any stupid – me and you could do that type of trade. You know what I want to see him do? I want him see him to get the Joe Ryan, the Tariq Skubal. That's the deal I wanted to make. Like, anybody can get – me and you can get Freddie Peralta. Like, it doesn't take a genius to figure that one out. The Brewers want to shed payroll. Like, it's not going to take a lot to get him. Right? Tariq Skubal and Joe Ryan are the two guys that I can say, holy shit, look what David Stearns did here. He gave up 3, possibly 4 top prospects to land damn good pitchers. But here's the thing. This is why I keep on saying they still need 2 starters. At least one top line and one number 2 or number 3 type starter. So I don't see him trading for 2 big type of, like, is he going to get Terry Skubal and Freddie Peralta in a trade because he's afraid to spend the money? Or
that's why I think Amaya is going to be a New York Met, because I think that David Stearns understands that is probably the only legitimate, unless you're talking about giving Ranger Suarez a deal, and I can see the Mets doing that too. I don't mind Suarez, by the way, and we haven't talked about Suarez. I want to get your thoughts and opinions.
But he's not an ace, though.
No, but you don't need him to be if you're going to go out there and trade for another ace. You don't need
Ranger
Suarez to be an ace.
That's the problem. I think he's going to do one or the other. This is the problem that I have with David Stearns. I don't think he's like, if you want to sign Ranger Suarez and sign, and trade for a Joe Ryan, But I don't think he's going to do that. I think it's one or
Would
the
you be
other.
happy with Ranger Suarez and Freddie Peralta?
Yeah, but I think that's just a coward way out, to be quite
No, but
honest.
the thing is that you can't. Okay, if Ranger Suarez and Freddie Peralta are a New York Met, both are New York Mets in 2026, and the reports are that no other pitchers were available on the trade block. Alcantara is a Marlin, Joe Ryan is a Twin, and Skubal is a Detroit Tiger. Are you happy with what you have?
Peralta would probably be the guy. Well, yeah, because that was the best out there to get. But I tell you this right now, Tariq School better be on the Detroit Tigers. Joe Ryan better be on the Twins. Alcantara better be
That's
on
the
the Marlins.
assumption. That's
Because
the assumption.
if
Correct.
not, we're gonna compare those trades, saying just like when the Red Sox gave up for Crochet, and be like, the Mets could have beat that. We talked about that. That can't happen. You can't give me Peralta and Suarez and say, oh, look at our rotation. Now, again, it'll be better because God knows what we had last year. But again, you're going to be back to the same conversation next year because Peralta is a free agent. Yeah, Suarez will be here, but that's what you also have to worry about as well. So, look, the fact of the matter is, try to get the best guy you possibly can. Look, if Peralta ends up being the only guy traded out of the big pitchers on the market and the Mets get him, great. Smart move. But you know what? I'd rather have Valdez and I'd rather have Peralta instead of Suarez and Peralta. Like, Valdez is a better pitcher. Like, Suarez was really good last year, but he concerns me because he was in a contract year. And I worry about those type of guys. And again, look, it is what it is. Give me Peralta and Valdez, and I can say, okay, Stearns is cooking. But I truly feel this way. If you end up with Peralta and Suarez, and these other guys go elsewhere, like Valdez, like if the Phillies lose Valdez, Suarez, are they going to spend money to get another pitcher? Like, what if Valdez ends up on the Phillies? It's things like that as well. Because I don't think Suarez is going back to the Phillies. I know they got Sanchez, who kind of stepped up last year, but you have to also look at that as well. But I tell you this right now, I think David Stearns is going. He has to. He don't have a choice. We don't have a rotation. Like, we need guys in here, but I don't want to see a Suarez for Peralta and say, okay, great, it's better than what we had, and everybody's going to spin it. But Tariq Skubal is on, I don't know, pick a team in the National League. The Marlins traded Alcantara to somebody else. Like, that's what I worry about. Because you can't have the Garrett Crochet bite you in the ass again. Because that was a huge misstep by David Stearns. That should not have happened. You had them. You were talking to the White Sox about Garrett Crochet. You could have probably even took Luis Roberts' contract and even got more and gave up. You could have got it done. And he was hesitant to do it. And you know what? It probably cost us maybe a game or two. It's just, oh man, so frustrating.
Would you take on Byron Buxton's contract to get one of their pitchers, if it's Lopez or Joe Ryan?
Say it again. I'm sorry.
Would you take on the contract of Byron Buxton for either of those pitchers in Minnesota, either Pablo Lopez or Joe Ryan?
I'd only do it for Joe Ryan.
Really?
I like Pablo Lopez. Don't get me wrong, but I think you can get Pablo Lopez for less. I'd rather get.
What would you get? What do you think you get Pablo Lopez for? Because that was the name that I said.
Well, again,
the
teams want to get rid of the contract, so I don't think it's going to be a lot. I think you would have to give up more for Joe Ryan just to take on the Buxton contract. So, like, that's why I would rather have Joe Ryan. Like, if you want me to take this contract, I want Joe Ryan. I don't want Pablo Lopez, even though it's not a terrible idea.
Sure.
But like, just for Pablo Lopez, I think you probably have to give like a top 15 prospect, but probably like 10 and 15 because you are taking on that money, and you're going to take out the entire contract. So that's where I don't think the Lopez and Buxton makes more. I think the Ryan and Buxton makes more sense as a package deal.
Would you take on Christian Yelich's contract to take on Freddie Peralta?
Oof. I like Yelich.
That's less prospects in return for Freddie Peralta, and you also perhaps settle your left field debate there. But you
Mm.
also could get a bench bat if you get another. It's fluid
You
at
see,
that point.
I'm a big fan of Yelich, and I know his injury history and his back is just a problem. But man, mm,
He's still good, man. I mean, that
I
bat
know
still
he is, and he
produces
had
when
a
he's
good
on the
year
field.
last year, and he was one of the. He was really good last year for them. You know what? I would have to say yes, only because I don't think I mean, that kind of takes the Mets out of Bellinger's situation. You would think, right? They would have to sign Alonso at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, you could sign Bellinger and put him at first base, but I mean, that might piss off Met fans to the end all be all. So,
It's a possibility, man. The Brewers are worried about payroll. They're worried about payroll. They
no,
are.
no, what I'm saying. That's why like a team like the Twins and the Brewers, if you can, steal players like everybody else seems to do, except for the Mets, do it. Like, let's get over on these teams. I would do it. I would definitely take the Yelich deal back. It's risky, but you know what? And yeah, Peralta's a free agent. I mean, it is what it is. I'm not scared. I'm not scared by the guy who's on a contract year. I'm just not. That's why I said go get Tariq Skubal. I don't care. Like, the guy's going to be a damn good pitcher in 2026, and you got the richest owner in baseball. If he wants him, he's going to keep him. Like, it's just that simple. Like, Steve Cohen is not going to lose a player because of money. They lost Yamamoto because Yamamoto used the Mets to get to the Dodgers. If you give the most money to a guy like Tariq Skubal, he's going to stay here. So I'm not too worried about that. So, I even okay, let me ask you this one then. Since we're pairing a bad contract with, I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
All right. So Javi Baez and Tariq Skubal. You can put him in center field.
I don't even know what the Javier Baez contract
I
is.
don't know, but
Well, I
put him
need
in
to
center
know. I
field.
can't answer that without knowing. Let me look at
It's
it.
only some change. I
I'm
think
on
it's
Spotrac.
3 more years left, I think.
It's essentially kind of the same as Christian Yelich's. I mean, you're buying no, actually, it's a little bit less. It's $48 million over the next 2 seasons for
Oh shit,
Javier
I do
Baez.
that in a heartbeat. You could throw him in center field. He showed he can be a center fielder. And you know what? He turned a new leaf last year. He kind of I think he kind of grew up a little bit, where he was like, listen, I know I'm not a shortstop anymore. I know I'm not as good as I used to be, but I do anything to win. And I
I
think
would
that
do it.
mindset is a big deal. I
I
do that.
would do it. I
I would do
just don't
that.
think that the Tigers are in like
Well, they wouldn't do that because they know they would make.
maybe if they don't come, like, it's all contingent on them in this extension. Can they swing the money for a 300 $250 $300 million contract for Tariq Skubal? Can they do it or can they not? If they don't think that they can do it, which is the ownership's decision,
They're gonna blow up their
then
team.
you have to think about kind of moving off of a contract like Baez, right? Which
Correct.
makes the Gleyber Torres qualifying offer also kind of like whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard. It's hard. That situation for them is hard. And I just don't know enough about the Tigers organization with where they're at right now and their ownership levels commitment to comment on that. But if the Tigers approached the Mets and said, you need to take Bias's contract over the next 2 seasons to get Skubal, hell yes, I'm doing it, is what I'll say. Yes, I'll do that.
I see Kevin. I've seen a couple of people in the chat as well talking about it's stupid to trade for Tariq Skubal knowing that he's not going to sign an extension. Why are we worried about that? Like,
Yeah.
like you're gonna have him for 2026. Like we're too focused on 2027. Like, stop it. This is why I don't think Met fans really want to win. I think they want to lose and complain. I truly believe that. Like, it's such stupid conversations to worry about a guy who's a potential free agent. We have the richest owner in baseball. I said this again. If Tariq Skubal goes out there and throws to a 2.2 ERA and possibly another Cy Young, you really think that Steve Cohen is not going to give him any penny in every year possible? Scott Boras is going right to Steve Cohen for the last match of a contract. Like, stop worrying about that. This is not the Wilpons. It's not. We got to stop. We really have to stop with that. You're getting the best pitcher in baseball on your team to start a season. Because again, you can't half-ass this offseason and say, "Oh, we'll get this guy at the deadline." Have you seen David Stern's work at the deadline? It sucks. Get who you can get. If Tariq Skubal is available and they're saying, "Listen, if we're going to trade Tariq Skubal, it's kind of like blowing up our team, right? We're not going to be really good without Tariq Skubal." All right, listen, we don't want to give up 4 prospects for Tariq Skubal, but hey, we'll take that $48 million on Baez's contract and we'll give you 3 prospects instead of 4. How about that? The Tigers get rid of that money and they get 3 top 10 prospects or top 15 prospects in that deal. Do it. And yet, Dwayne, I agree. You can't guarantee Skubal won't like New York. Sure. But you know what? I'd rather take that risk than say, "Oh, well, he might not like New York. So we're just going to let him go somewhere else and deal with that. Hopefully not a National League team that we have to face off against and worry about that." So, but again, everybody's saying, "Oh, so all of a sudden Peralta can pitch in New York. All of a sudden Joe Ryan can pitch in New York, or Valdez, or anybody else you sign or trade for." Like, stop worrying about that. You get the best guy available. If Tariq Skubal's available, you get him. If he doesn't like New York, well, oh well. Mike Hampton pitched good and he hated New York, right? And he was gone to Colorado. So I see it as this: get the job, get it done. That's it. Do whatever you need to do. If you don't like Javi Baez and that's going to stop you from getting Tariq Skubal, then David Stearns is an idiot. He really is. It gets to the point where I think people just don't want to win. Like, you're afraid of what? Losing? Don't we do that enough? Like, I just don't understand. Hello, guys. It's 2026 coming up. 40-year anniversary of the Mets last time winning the World Series. I wasn't born yet. All right. Some of you that might have been born were very young. Like, come on. Like,
I wasn't. Hell
yeah,
no.
come on. Like, should we move on?
I think we should move on. Honestly, I think that we've exhausted the point of the Mets needing to be a little bit more aggressive. I mean, and you take a look at deferred payments. There's been deferred payments already in the early free agency of some of these deals as well. With some of these teams, I think the Mets could definitely explore that as well. It's kind of a risk you run with the CBA negotiations coming up, but I don't know. I think that I agree with you. I think that it's time that the Mets take a stand in terms of being more aggressive. Although with David Stearns, I still think that he's in this middle point of playing the now versus the long game. And I think that with where the Mets roster is at right now, especially when you take a look at like Lindor right now and where he's at in his career and some of the other guys on this team, you're kind of running out of time, but you've bought yourself a little bit more time with Juan Soto. So it's kind of like this never-ending gray area of the roster. And that's just the fact of the matter of David Stearns, of what he has to account for. The pitching coming up, it's young. The position players, like, let's say Jet Williams ends up making the roster at some point, and Carson Bench does too, alongside Juan Soto, young players. It's a tough. The Mets, I feel like, in comparison to teams around the league, are just a unique situation. And I do not envy. I've said this since last offseason. I do not envy David Stearns' position, because it's damned if you do and damned if you don't, honestly. Right? If you give out a contract like Valdez and he ends up being, the savior for the first couple of seasons, like you said, nobody cares about year 4, 5, 6.
No.
Nobody does. But do you think that Framber Valdez is going to actually be the needle mover of the rotation to win you a World Series? Probably not. So he can post like a 2.5 ERA and be the headliner of the rotation, and you still flounder in the wild card series and a divisional series. There's a lot of what ifs, right? And there's a lot of different irrespective moves. You have to think about, I think David Stearns is just thinking about the needle movers right now. And that's what he needs to just keep thinking about. And
Well,
it's easy to say. It's easy to
yeah,
say from our
yeah,
position,
need
but
to move
from
away,
David
man.
Stearns'
Like,
standpoint,
let's go. Like, get it
yeah,
done.
no, I agree.
So yeah, I mean, we don't even need to talk about Nemo because I think it's kind of pointless at this point. The big move. I mean, we have to wait and see. I mean, Bellinger's still on the table until Alonso was
Let,
signed.
let's let's talk about Kyle Tucker though. Do you
Okay,
think Kyle Tucker is even a realistic possibility for the Mets? Because I do not.
no, not at all.
No, I don't think so either.
That and he has
I agree.
a draft pick attached, so I don't think that's gonna
I
be
don't.
a possibility
You
at
know
all.
what? Like a lot of people talk about that draft pick. I don't even like.
I think
Who
Stearns cares about that.
I
I
don't
think
know
he
if Davis.
cares.
Maybe, maybe, maybe. Who
Like,
cares? I don't care about it. No, I mean,
because I mean, signing Kyle Tucker, what would that put Juan Soto in left field?
no. You could put Kyle Tucker in left field. I actually thought about this too. I mean, I don't think they're going to move Juan Soto out of right field. I mean, Soto has Tucker has the better arm by a smidge. It's not. It's like very close. Tucker's not like an all-world defender either. That you're like, oh, I'm gonna move Juan Soto out of right field for. Like you can stick to Kyle Tucker at left field and be okay. You know what I mean? Like I don't know.
You know, I mean, Tucker's the better player, but I don't know.
And
You
Juan
know,
Soto?
oh
You think
no,
Tucker's a
I'm
better?
sorry. I'm thinking Bellinger. I'm sorry, that just popped up in my no. I mean, it would be awesome, and then you could just throw Carson Benz in center field and you'd be ready to go. Like I would do that in a heartbeat. Like let's go. I mean, I'm ready. But see, I think getting Tucker doesn't allow you to sign Pete Alonso. And I mean, that doesn't really, hurt my feelings, but it will hurt Met fans' feelings.
I don't think that the Mets are prepared to give away a 400+ million deal, man. I like to another player. I don't think that that's going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen. And so I can't see Kyle Tucker being a fit. I think I would throw him out there in left field all day long. Um, I just don't see him being a fit
Well,
with what he's going to be mostly asking for with his deal.
well,
They have him they have him valued at 10 years, $400 million, man. That's
yeah,
crazy.
that's not. But you know what? I agree with like Kev and Wilfredo in the comments. I think Bellinger fits better with this team because he can play multiple outfield positions. He can play first base, and Bellinger is not better than Tucker. Don't say that. That's stupid. Like he's not. Bellinger has revived his career over the last 2 seasons, but Tucker has been an All-Star MVP type caliber player. But I think Bellinger fits the Mets more. Like I think Tucker is a great player, but I don't think 10 years, $400 million is what's going to take to get him. You can get Bellinger for probably what 5 or 6 for 175, 180. That seems
Somewhere
like the
around
number
there.
that
Yeah.
they like. I think
Uh-huh.
that's more suitable, and he's more versatile, and you can use him in many more positions. He's just as good, if not better, defender in all outfield positions and first base. And I think that's more valuable when it comes to the Mets. You also have to see the fit for the Mets as well. And I think Bellinger fits better. But that's the thing. Like, is Bellinger taking you out of Pete Alonso's situation? Because in my opinion, you got to get Bellinger and you have to get Pete Alonso to really make this an offseason. Or you just go to a direct opposite route and go get Bellinger, put him at first base, and go get an outfielder.
Yeah.
Trade for an outfielder. That's the only other thing I can think of.
So this is what I'm saying is that Kyle Tucker, like you can kiss Pete Alonso goodbye if you want Kyle Tucker, as AB is saying in the chat. Like there's no chance that you can even like maybe you can even kiss like a Framber Valdez goodbye with that type of money that you're gonna prioritize for Kyle Tucker. That is an immense contract to take on. Immense compared to what you already have on the payroll and what you still need even after Kyle Tucker. I don't think Kyle Tucker is the needle mover to a championship team and a championship roster that the Mets need, right? I think that you can go lower and aim lower for a guy like Bellinger. But Rob, I still have my doubts about the Mets going out there and being able to go get a guy like Bellinger, who's going to be seeking a 6-year deal, and also a guy that's going to be seeking a 6-year deal in Pete Alonso. A lot of Mets fans have this notion that they can go out there and get Bellinger and Alonso. I would love to see that happen. I cannot see that happening. I do not see that happening. I don't.
Okay,
And so,
so let's say it's one or the other.
yeah,
All right, let's say it's one or the other. Who's the
right.
other bat?
I think you have to go right now. I think you have to prioritize Bellinger. Although I would take Pete Alonso's bat more so than Bellinger.
Yeah, but let's say you get one of them, whichever one. Like
Okay,
obviously, Pete Alonso's the bigger power guy. So,
sure.
but is Alonso enough or just Bellinger is enough? It's not. That's the problem.
No. You're right. Correct. Which is why I always say, right? I don't think that a trade is out of the realm of possibility, right? We talk about free agency and we talk about these guys that are demanding these big contracts like Pete Alonso, Cody Bellinger, Kyle Tucker. That's why I made a video about Stephen Kwan. Like, you think that it's out of the blue that I made a video about Stephen Kwan? I know that he does not fit the bill of like a Tucker or Bellinger in left field. I get that. But if you get a guy like Stephen Kwan, who is a prolific leadoff hitter and has been for the first 5 years of his career, you have the money flexibility to still keep Pete Alonso in free agency. You do. That's an objective statement. And you're
Yeah,
able to have a 1-2 tandem of Lindor or Stephen Kwan, Lindor, and a guy like Pete Alonso and Juan Soto as your top four. I know a lot of people don't like Stephen Kwan because he doesn't have the power. He doesn't have this, that, and the other. He has speed. He can steal you some bases. He has range. He's a really good outfielder. And he fits the mold. Like it's a lineup fit instead of giving you a guy that is a premier middle of the order guy. And for only $8.5 million, this guy is an arbitration. He's not going to be a $25
yeah.
million cap
But
hit
because
on your payroll.
but here's the thing though. Obviously, you gotta trade for that. Obviously, what would it take? Because obviously, you just said pre-arb, so he's gonna
No,
cost you
he's ARB.
something.
He's not pre-ARB. He's
He's
ARB.
arb. Okay, but okay,
Yeah.
so it's probably gonna cost you. Like, what do you think it would take, prospect wise?
I don't see that. I don't like it depends because the Guardians are also in a tough situation, man. The Guardians are in a really tough situation. That whole Class A thing that's going on is going to be very indicative of how they approach this offseason. And I think that they're trying to build their lineup in a certain way. The Mets already have the power in their lineup, right? They do. And I think that they can retain that power in their lineup with Pete Alonso. Now, if you are against Pete Alonso coming back to this team, then this is not the move that you want to see happen, right? This is Stephen Kwan going over, for prospects. I think that you can send over a pitching prospect, maybe a guy like Ryan Clifford too, who's the future first base, which is why I said if you get Stephen Kwan, you retain Pete Alonso, you afford to get rid of Ryan Clifford, and you go ahead and throw a package together of Ryan Clifford and Brandon Sproat over for a guy like Stephen Kwan.
I think
I
that's a
get
lot.
that it's far fetched. What was that?
I think that's a lot for Quan.
I don't know if that's a lot for Kwan. Really, I don't. I think people are really undervaluing Kwan. I know some of the metrics went down in 2025, but I think that defensively, his all-around game on the bases, defensively and offensively, as a leadoff hitter, getting on base for the guys that are soon to be following Lindor, Soto, and in the case that you re-signed Pete Alonso, I think that he is the perfect guy to set the tone in your lineup. The New York Mets took a shot in the dark in 2024, putting Lindor back in leadoff. I was one of the only
You
people,
did say
right,
that.
to say Lindor should be leadoff because he did so very successfully in Cleveland. And a lot
Yeah.
of people said, you did not trade for Francisco Lindor to be a leadoff hitter on the New York Mets. You paid him to be the run producer. And look how that played out. I really do think that even Lindor in the 2 spot can be a really big asset to this team with a guy that can really set the tone at the top of your lineup. And if you're thinking about bringing up a guy like Jet Williams anyways, like that's also a guy that can be in the leadoff spot for you. He's a premier leadoff type of hitter. So I just don't like. For me personally, I see where Mets fans push back on the whole Stephen Kwan thing, but I'm in favor of him. I think that the Mets explored that type of deal, it would be possible. And I'm not really sure where the Guardians are standing with this whole roster construction. If they're listening on a package deal and they're just going to blow the whole thing up and they want to send Jose Ramirez over too, Brett Beatty is off the table. Have Brett Beatty, have
Oh,
Brandon Sproat, have Ryan Clifford, have Jet Williams. I don't care what you need to
oh,
have all of these guys, right? Have all of these guys and give me Kwan and Jose Ramirez. I don't think that's a
well,
possibility, but if it is, do that.
you know what? I think remember how I said like the fit of McNeil and Nimmo in this lineup made no sense when they didn't bat 1 and 2 because they didn't really fit in this lineup. Right? Nimmo was batting cleanup in fifth, and McNeil was batting sixth, seventh, eighth. It didn't fit. Those guys were meant to be the 1 and 2 hitters of this lineup. And the reason why, and look, I think it's a lot for Kwan, but again, Kwan fits perfectly because I truly think to have a 30, and I know people say, oh, well, Tani leads off. That's great. Yeah, but they also got, other 30 home run hitters that are batting third and fourth in that lineup as well. And Otani has a tremendous amount of speed as well. So what Kwan does is get on base, right? To have a 40 home run guy in Juan Soto, let's not go crazy and say he's going to hit another 40. Let's say he'll hit 32, 33. Lindor hits 30. Let's say Pete Alonso comes back. He hits 35 to 40, right? That's more guys on base for those guys. I think a lot of problems this year was Lindor's home runs was a lot of, lead off, with nobody on base type of home runs. And I think that was a huge problem as well. And, Juan Soto being a guy who, takes walks every time he can. I think the fact that you have a guy like Kwan might show more strikes for Juan Soto. And I think the big reason why Juan Soto took a ton of walks, even though he had 40 home runs, I think a lot of walks that he took was the fact that they weren't pitching to him because, let's be honest, who's really getting on base in front of Juan Soto? Right? Lindor didn't get on base a lot. Like that was one of his big problems. I don't like Lindor as leadoff hitter, especially when he can hit 30 home runs. So you can put him as a leadoff hitter, and I think the lineup construction was terrible for this team. Kwan fixes that lineup construction because Kwan's going to be the leadoff. Let's say Soto bats second, or you can put Lindor second, but let's say Juan Soto bats second, Lindor third, Pete Alonso fourth, and then so on and so forth. That lineup fits so much better. And I think when you put Lindor in a leadoff spot and you put Soto in the number 2 spot, your cleanup spot, if it wasn't Pete Alonso, it was just all over the place. Like it kept on, you never really had the cleanup hitter you should have hit. And I know people say, oh, baseball's changed. Not really. Right? You still see leadoff hitters with leadoff hitters. Like there isn't a lot of Otanis out there. So, even with Aaron Judge, they're batting him second or third right now. So, yeah, you could do that, and I'm fine with that. I think any way to get yourself better, you do it. But it's gonna be fascinating because David Stearns did all these stupid 1-year deals and option deals that leaves a tremendous amount of holes for this team. And now your offseason has to rely on a lot of trades and sign-ins to fill a roster. That's why I think you got to stop with these stupid 1-year deals all over the place or 2-year deals with an option because you leave yourself so exposed the next offseason where you have to make so many moves just to fill a roster. That's why, it would be nice to sign players that are going to be here for the next couple of seasons. So next year, we don't have to get 4 fucking pitchers in our rotation and 7 bullpen arms because we don't have nobody because you gave all 1-year deals and options. So it's going to be fascinating, Chris, with the winter meetings a week away. I truly think the Mets are going to make a trade. It's either going to be Jeff McNeil or Kodai Senga is going to be gone by the winter meetings. That's my prediction. One of those guys are going to be gone by the winter meetings. Probably Senga. I think Jeff McNeil is going to take a little bit more work. I think he's going to get packaged in a bigger deal, in my opinion. And I think Senga is going to get unloaded before the winter meetings because I do think the Mets are going to get a top starter during the winter meetings. If that's a signing or a trade, it's anybody's guess. But that's what I think is going to happen, Chris. So, what are your thoughts on that winter meetings?
I'm going to just give you a big prediction. I'm going to go 10 toes down with this. I'll probably look like a fool in the end. But I'll say this. I think Stephen Kwan is a Met in 2026. I do
Interesting.
think so. I think so. I think that he fits what David Stearns wants in terms of defense, in terms of lineup construction. If you're not packaging anything, I think that straight up, he's a guy that you can get for lower prospect value and give what you already have in your farm system in return. And he's under multiple years of contract, I guess, control, right? I do think that's a really big possibility for the New York Mets. I'm going out on a limb. I'm not saying I've heard anything about it, but I'm just saying I think that this is where I would envision the Mets going in a life without Brandon Nimmo, because you have Carson Bench coming up, and this outfield that Errol Walker's is coming out right here and saying Kwan left field, Bench in center field, Soto in right field, and Tyrone Taylor on your bench. Yeah, I'll take that outfield all day long. All
Absolutely.
day long. All day long. So I like this Stephen Kwan fit for the New York Mets. And again, I released a video and I dropped it on my channel a couple of days ago. Check it out if you missed it. But, there's a lot of other names out there. I would like to have, and someone also said in the chat, would you like one for one, Kyle Tucker or Pete Alonso? Who would you rather have? I would take the all around player in Kyle Tucker. I would take him. But it would just be about understanding that you are giving him 10 years, most likely, and you're going to be paying him when he is like, 39, 38, 39 years old, right? And if Pete Alonso is willing to take, right, a 5-year deal, I don't know if do you think Pete Alonso gets a 60-year? I don't know if he gets a 60-year. I think he'll get a 5-year deal. I don't know if he gets a 6th. And then you're talking about paying Pete Alonso until he's what, 36, maybe 37. So it's a little bit of a difference there. I would
Well,
take
are the
Kyle
Red
Tucker given the prime years though, but I can see an argument for both.
uh, I could see the Red Sox doing it, not the Mets.
For sure.
Because
For
again,
sure.
the Red Sox are gonna go get their guy, and they don't care if it's gonna cost them the extra year, which I don't think the Mets will do. That with anybody for that matter. So that's the problem. Like for all the Met fans that are gonna cry to the heavens about Pete Alonso, just remember that I seen the Red Sox already do a real crochet get their guy, and it cost them, but it ultimately landed in their favor when they extended him. Same thing goes for Pete Alonso. If the Red Sox want Pete Alonso, and it's between now, if Steve Cohen jumps in, I think it's a whole different story. But let's say Steve Cohen is just on the back burners here, and David Stearns is controlling what's going on with Pete Alonso. Does anybody believe that David Stearns is going to win that competition with the Red Sox? No, because we already know David Stearns is not going that way with Pete Alonso. He didn't want him last year until Steve Cohen jumped in. So that's the problem that I have. And again, everybody knows I'm not the biggest Pete Alonso fan, but I've always said that Pete Alonso will probably be better off a Met than anywhere else. But it would be interesting to see him in Fenway Park, to be quite honest with you. Just as a baseball fan, not as a Met fan. But
It's it's Bregman versus Alonso for them. And I think that the same thing can be said for the New York Mets, especially as they view Brett Beatty at this point, whether he's a trade candidate, because leading up to this offseason, right, in the early goings before the Simeon trade, I thought that if they moved off of Pete Alonso, they could easily move Brett Beatty over to second base and be a second baseman moving forward. That's not the case anymore. It's either Brett Beatty's your third baseman, you use him as a bench bat, which I don't think that you do coming off of such a good season. This is like the peak like value of Brett Beatty right now. This is like where you move on from him. So if you do not believe that he is your starting third baseman of the future, which David Stearns could believe, like let's be honest, like last year could have been enough for David Stearns to be like, okay, let's give Brett Beatty another chance at third base and he could be our third baseman of the future. I don't necessarily believe in it. Like, I'm not going to get fooled, but if he proves me wrong, he proves me wrong. But yeah, Red Sox have spent big. I mean, I don't know about long-term years, but 3 years, $120 million for Alex Bregman. That's $40 million per year, MEZ. That's pretty big money they allocated to that. He did opt out, but that's money off the books now that they can go ahead and give to a guy like Pete Alonso. So I still do view the Red Sox as a very big threat for Pete Alonso. That's what all the reports and rumors are saying right now. And it's between Bregman and Alonso for them right now. And I think that what the Red Sox do on that front could determine what the Mets do as well as a counter move.
I don't know, but how crazy would it be if the Mets lose Alonso, lose Diaz, trade Nimmo, and trade Jeff McNeil in the same offseason? Like,
I
I
don't
mean,
think that there's if all that happens, I don't think that there's a way that you really recover in terms of being a better team on paper moving into 2026. I don't think that there's a way that you do that unless you make all the perfect counter moves of getting a competent third baseman to offset Pete Alonso. There's not a besides Okamoto, there's not really a competent first baseman that you can throw out there right now that would replace Pete Alonso, especially with Naylor off the board. Um, Diaz, the only replacement that would be very, I guess, okay with is Robert Suarez. Like, it, it's not. It would on paper, it would not be a good look if that happened, Rob. It would
well,
not
you
be.
sign Bellinger and you sign Kyle Schwarber. Problem solved.
Kyle Schwarber is very far off, and that's also a report that we haven't talked about is that Kyle Schwarber is very far off with the Phillies right now in terms of an extension. I would love to see Kyle Schwarber in the Mets uniform. That solves the DH, capabilities. That also means that Vientos is gone, right? I mean, there's no room for Vientos at that
Yeah.
point if you're thinking about keeping Brett Beatty, and Vientos is surely gone. I also don't think that. Listen, I will say this. If Pete Alonso, I don't think that there's any world that this happens. I really don't. But I think that if the Mets really wanted to swing big for this lineup, I think with Kyle Schwarber and where he's at in his career, that's like a 3 to 4 year deal waiting to happen. You can go out there and do Pete Alonso and Kyle Schwarber. The fact of the matter is that Pete Alonso will just have to be your first baseman for the first 3 to 4 years in that long-term deal. And I think that all of us Mets fans, I've said it myself, that I don't want to see Pete Alonso long-term at first base. And I think that's what David Stearns is thinking as well. So it's a little bit far-fetched. It could happen monetarily. I just don't think that's the best fit with both of those guys and the positional misalignments there.
Well, it's definitely going to be interesting for sure, as David Stern's got a lot of work to do, and the winter meetings are coming up in a week, and we're ending November, I guess, on a weird note because of the reports that came out with the Lindor McNeil nonsense, Soto Lindor nonsense, and all that fun stuff. But I do know one thing for sure, Chris. It's gonna listen up, everybody. Is that the Mets can win the World Series in 2026. But if Pete Alonso's not on that team, they're not going to celebrate it. So, David Stearns, make sure you sign Pete Alonso just for the pure soul of Met fans, so they can just, lose with Pete Alonso and everybody would be excited and happy. Because, I mean, Met fans seem like they're ecstatic, right? Pete Alonso had a great year, and, too many Met fans just want Pete Alonso to be back. And as I said earlier, I don't think David Stearns is going to go more than 5 years. I think he would be straining to give him 5 years. I think he will. I think he'd rather give him a 4 year deal. But I tell you right now, if the Red Sox are desperate, and they did it with Crochet, they got Sonny Gray. I do think that the Red Sox are a real threat. I said a couple of times that I think the Reds are kind of players here. I don't think they're going to outspend the Red Sox. But I don't know, man. I think you worry about teams like that, and that's why I always worry about teams that are like Diaz with the Dodgers. When they want somebody, they go get him, and that's where I think David Stearns is on the short end of the stick. So let's just see how it goes. I do think McNeil or Senga will be traded before the winter meetings. Any final thoughts when it comes to the besides anything else? that you have
I
going
think
on?
McNeil, I agree with you. I'll just say this. I think McNeil is, especially with what we talked about at the top of the stream and just like where he's at with the Mets and the contract. I think McNeil is definitely going to go. I still think it's a little bit 50-50. Maybe I would say 55-45 in favor of Senga being traded. But I think that in the mind of David Stearns, if he doesn't get the appropriate value back for Senga, he might be hesitant, even though we would all like to see, including myself, Senga being dealt. And I think that there are a lot of moves that David Stearns has to be aggressive on. He has to change the philosophy, and that's just the fact of the matter with the way that 2025 played out. Shout out to Hakeem the Dream, also for the super chat as well, talking about Lindor. Shout out to Darren Rivera, saying great job as usual, and shouting out a lot of people in the stream, including Ibby and Ray and Steven in the chat. And as the rest
Yes.
of you all, we appreciate everyone being here. We read all these comments. I'm trying to respond to as many comments as possible. And at this point, right, when we're talking about rumors, like there's a lot of differences of opinions that are had. And that's okay because the state of the Mets roster right now is anything but sure. There's a lot of things that can move in different parts, and there's a lot of different ways that Stearns can fix this roster. You just hope that he goes about it in a very methodical but aggressive way, because I think we're all tired of the methodical way. We just want the Mets to be aggressive and get the talent here and everything else to work itself out. So good stream. Going on 2 hours. I did not think we were gonna be on here for 2 hours, but
Me
we did. And I'm gonna go watch some football now.
Yeah, thought there was not a lot to talk about, but I guess there was. So, all right, guys. So, again, no mess hot stove in the books. Again, next hot stove will be probably a few days before the winter meetings, unless any other news hits or breaks with the Mets. So, guys, thank you for watching. It was tremendous. I mean, a ton of views all over the place on multiple channels and on X as well. So, have a great night, guys. Let's go Mets. Happy December in a few hours, and let's go, guys. This is where the winter meetings is coming. This is where the offseason kicks off. Let's get started. Let's get the players we need in here, guys. Have a great night, and we'll see you next time, guys. Good night.
Let's go Mets.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets.